I woke up to the sound of heavy machinery that Monday morning, my coffee cup nearly slipping from my hand as I looked out the window to see bulldozers tearing into the eastern field of my property. My property. The 50 acres of pristine Colorado land that had been in my family for 3 generations, that I'd meticulously maintained since my father passed it to me 10 years ago. The land I had plans for. What the hell? I muttered, grabbing my boots and jacket, not even bothering to change out of my pajama pants as I bolted outside. The autumn air was crisp as I sprinted across my yard toward the fence line that separated my home from the undeveloped portion of my property. I could see at least 4 bulldozers, 2 excavators, and several pickup trucks with Pinecrest Development logos on their sides. Workers in hard hats were measuring and staking out what looked like foundation markers. "Hey, hey," I shouted, waving my arms as I approached. "What do you think you're doing on my land?" A woman in a pantsuit holding a clipboard turned to face me, her blonde bob swinging with the movement. She wore oversized sunglasses and a pearl necklace that seemed ridiculously formal for a construction site. She looked me up and down, clearly judging my disheveled appearance. "Sir, this is the new Pinecrest Meadows development. We have all the proper permits." Her voice was tight, rehearsed. "I'm Vincent Xavier, and this is my property. I never sold this land to anyone, and I sure as hell never approved any development." My voice was rising with each word. "You need to stop your equipment and get off my property right now." The woman's smile tightened. "Mr. Xavier, I'm Margaret Weldon, president of the Pinecrest Homeowners Association. This land was legally acquired through the county. Perhaps you should check your mail more often." I was about to argue further when a familiar voice called out, "Vince, I've been trying to reach you for days." I turned to see my lawyer and longtime friend Nathan Blackburn jogging toward us, his suit jacket flapping in the wind, tie askew. "Nate, what the hell is happening here?" I demanded as he approached. "That's what I've been trying to tell you," he said, breathing heavily from the run. "There's been some kind of administrative error with the county. They've somehow approved permits for development on part of your eastern property." Margaret Weldon's smug smile widened. "Not an error, Mr. Blackburn, a proper legal proceeding." Mr. Xavier failed to respond to multiple notices regarding property tax reassessment. The county seized the eastern portion of the land, and we acquired it at auction last month. My blood ran cold. "What notices? I never received anything." "They were sent certified mail to your address of record," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "My address of record is 458 Mountain View Drive," I said. "It has been for 10 years. Margaret consulted her clipboard. "The notices were sent to 458 Mountain Ridge Road." Nathan and I exchanged looks. Mountain Ridge Road was on the opposite side of town. "That's not my address," I said through gritted teeth. "This is clearly a mistake, and you need to stop construction immediately until we sort this out." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Margaret replied. "We have 22 pre-sold townhomes and a strict construction schedule to maintain. Our buyers are expecting to move in by spring." I felt my face heating up. "I don't care about your schedule. This is my land." "Not anymore," she said with finality. "If you have concerns, you can take them up with the county. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have work to continue." She turned her back to me, a clear dismissal. I took a step toward her, but Nathan caught my arm. "Don't," he warned. "We'll handle this properly. Let me make some calls." I reluctantly followed Nathan back to my house, watching helplessly as the machinery continued to tear into my land. The land where I'd planned to expand my own construction business, Alexander Construction, named after my grandfather who started it all. Inside my kitchen, I paced while Nathan made calls. I'd built this house myself after taking over my father's construction company 5 years ago. We'd grown steadily, focusing on quality custom homes and commercial buildings around Boulder County. The eastern property was meant to be our new headquarters and equipment yard. "This is ridiculous," I fumed. How can they just take my land because of a clerical error? Nathan held up a finger as he finished his call. Okay, I've spoken with the clerk at the county assessor's office. They did indeed send notices to the wrong address, but legally, it's still on you to keep your address current with them. My address is current with them. I just paid property taxes last year. I know, Nathan said, rubbing his temples. But apparently, someone in their system made an error and changed your address. When you didn't respond to the notices, they moved forward with the tax lien and auction. I slammed my hand on the counter. So some keyboard jockey makes a mistake and I lose 20 acres of my land. That's insane. We can fight this, Nathan assured me. But it might take time. The problem is they've already started construction. I walked to the window, watching the destruction of the pristine land my grandfather had purchased in 1958. Who is this Pinecrest HOA anyway? I've never heard of them. They're relatively new, Nathan said, scrolling through his phone. From what I can find online, they manage a small community about 5 miles from here. Margaret Weldon is the president, and they've been looking to expand for a while. Something clicked in my brain. Weldon. Where do I know that name? Nathan raised an eyebrow. You turned down a job from a Thomas Weldon last year, something about cutting corners on materials. That's right, I said, the memory flooding back. He wanted me to build a community center but got angry when I wouldn't use substandard materials to come in under his ridiculously low budget. Said he'd make me regret it. Husband? Probably. Can't be a coincidence. Nathan sighed. Let me call Judge Martinez. He might be able to issue an emergency stop work order until we can get a hearing. While Nathan made more calls, I showered and changed into work clothes. By the time I returned, Nathan looked grim. The judge won't issue a stop work order. They have all the proper permits, and on paper they own that land now. This is insane, I growled. There's got to be something we can do. We can file a lawsuit claiming improper notification and administrative error, but that could take months to resolve. In the meantime, they'll keep building. I stared out the window again, watching the excavators dig foundation trenches. Then it hit me. I might not be able to stop them through legal channels immediately, but I had other resources. Nate, keep working the legal angle. I need to make some calls of my own. After Nathan left, I got to work. First, I called Nicole Briggs, my project manager and right-hand woman at Alexander Construction. Boss, I heard what's happening, she said when she answered. Half the crew is already talking about it. I need your help, Nick. Remember that development plan we drew up for the eastern property? I want you to pull those files and meet me at the office in an hour. You got it. What are you thinking? Something a little unorthodox, I admitted. How quickly can we mobilize our equipment? For what? For a rescue mission. An hour later, I was at my office with Nicole and my core team, Ethan Rhodes, my head foreman, Gabriela Martinez, our architect, and Roberto Sanchez, our legal compliance officer. Here's the situation, I began, spreading out maps of my property on the conference table. The Pinecrest HOA has somehow acquired 20 acres of my land through a tax auction that never should have happened. They're already breaking ground on 22 townhouses. How is that even legal? Ethan asked, his bushy eyebrows furrowed in confusion. It's not entirely, I explained. There was a clerical error with the county assessor's office. They sent tax notices to the wrong address, then claimed I was delinquent when I didn't respond to notices I never received. Roberto shook his head. That's grounds for a lawsuit, but it won't stop construction immediately. Exactly, I said, which is why we need to think outside the box. Nicole, show them the plans. Nicole unrolled the blueprints we'd drawn up months ago for the development of that same parcel of land. Our original plan was to build our new headquarters here, I said, pointing to the center of the property. With equipment storage, material yards, and administrative offices. We've already done soil testing, environmental impact studies, and preliminary engineering. So what are you suggesting? Gabriela asked, studying the plans with a practiced eye. I took a deep breath. I'm suggesting we become very, very interested in these townhouses. 4 confused faces stared back at me. "Here's the plan," I continued. "Roberto, I want you to reach out to the Pinecrest HOA. Tell them Alexander Construction is interested in purchasing all 22 townhouses as investment properties." "All of them?" Roberto asked incredulously. "That would cost millions, I know. But we're not actually going to close on all of them. We just need to get involved in the project. Gabriella, I want you to review their architectural plans, find every single flaw and document them meticulously." Gabriella smiled slowly, understanding dawning. "I can do that, and I bet there will be plenty to find if they're rushing this development. Ethan, I want you to visit that construction site daily, document everything they're doing wrong. Safety violations, code violations, improper techniques, all of it." Ethan nodded eagerly. "They've already got 2 OSHA violations from what I could see just driving by this morning. Nicole," I turned to my project manager, "I need you to track down everything you can about this HOA. Board members, financial records, previous developments, complaints, anything that might be useful." "Consider it done," she said, already typing notes into her tablet. "What are you going to do?" Roberto asked cautiously. I smiled grimly. "I'm going to become the most interested, most annoying potential buyer they've ever met. And I'm going to find out exactly who changed my address in the county records." That afternoon, I paid a visit to the Pinecrest HOA sales office they'd hastily erected at the edge of my property. A perky real estate agent named Tiffany greeted me. "Welcome to Pinecrest Meadows. Are you interested in our luxury townhome community?" I put on my most charming smile. "Very interested. In fact, I'm considering purchasing multiple units as investment properties. I'm Vincent Xavier, owner of Alexander Construction." Her eyes widened. "Oh, well, that's wonderful. We have beautiful floor plans available. The townhomes start at $485,000. "Actually," I said, "I'd like to speak with Margaret Weldon about potentially purchasing all 22 units." Tiffany nearly dropped her brochure. All 22, I should call Mrs. Weldon right away." While she made the call, I wandered around the sales office, examining the floor plans and artist renderings. They were planning to pack those townhomes in tight, with minimal green space and parking. The construction quality, even in the drawings, looked subpar. 10 minutes later, Margaret Weldon burst through the door, her pearl necklace bouncing against her chest, a very different smile on her face than the one she'd shown me that morning. "Mr. Xavier, Tiffany tells me you're interested in investing in our community." I extended my hand. "That's right. I'm always looking for good investment opportunities. Though I must admit, I'm a bit surprised to find this development here. This property looks remarkably similar to land I thought I owned." Her smile faltered only momentarily. "Oh well, property lines can be confusing in rural areas. I assure you all our paperwork is in order." She quickly changed the subject. "Would you like to discuss bulk pricing for multiple units?" "Actually, I'm considering all 22, I said, watching her eyes light up with dollar signs. "But as a builder myself, I'd need to conduct my own inspections and review all your plans before making such a commitment." Of course," she agreed readily. "Though we do have other interested parties, so I couldn't hold all units indefinitely." "I understand completely. I just need access to the architectural plans, engineering reports, and permission for my team to observe the construction process." Margaret's smile tightened slightly. "We can provide some documentation, certainly, though some of it is proprietary." "I'm willing to sign an NDA, I offered smoothly. "And as a show of good faith, I'd be happy to put down a refundable deposit of $50,000 today." That did it. The thought of a potential multi-million-dollar sale and an immediate cash injection was too tempting. "Well, in that case, I think we can accommodate your requests," Margaret said. "Let me introduce you to our site manager and we can get the paperwork started." Over the next week, my team and I executed our plan with military precision. Roberto secured us access to all the development plans by dangling the prospect of a bulk purchase. Gabriella pored over the architectural drawings, finding numerous flaws and code violations. Ethan documented daily safety violations at the site. And Nicole uncovered a treasure trove of information about the Pinecrest HOA. We gathered in my conference room the following Monday for a status update. "They're cutting every corner possible," Gabriella reported, spreading out the marked-up architectural plans. "Foundations too shallow for our soil conditions. Inadequate insulation, undersized HVAC systems, and the roof trusses wouldn't handle our snow loads. I've documented 37 code violations just in the plans." Ethan went next. "The site is a disaster. Workers without proper safety equipment, trenches without proper shoring, improper disposal of construction waste. I've got over 50 OSHA violations documented with photos and video." "The HOA itself is a mess," Nicole added. "They've had 6 lawsuits from homeowners in their existing community in just 3 years. Complaints about arbitrary rule enforcement, mismanagement of funds, and failure to maintain common areas. And here's the kicker," Roberto said, sliding a folder across the table to me. "I found out who changed your address in the county records. A clerk named Linda Weldon, Margaret's sister-in-law, I guessed," Roberto nodded. "Works in the county assessor's office, has for 15 years. "So this was deliberate," I said, feeling a strange combination of anger and satisfaction. "They deliberately targeted my land, sent notices to a fake address, then swooped in to buy it at auction." "It gets better," Nicole said. "Thomas Weldon, Margaret's husband, is listed as the contractor for Pinecrest Development. But get this, his contractor's license was suspended last year for multiple building code violations. They're using a shell company and someone else's license," Ethan concluded. I sat back, taking it all in. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. Roberto, prepare a comprehensive report of all our findings for the county commissioners, the building department, OSHA, and the district attorney's office. Gabriella, draft a formal complaint to the state engineering and architectural boards. Ethan, call your contact at OSHA for an immediate site inspection." "And you?" Nicole asked. I smiled. "I'm going to have another chat with Margaret Weldon." The next day, I walked into the Pinecrest sales office with a check in my pocket and determination in my stride. Margaret greeted me enthusiastically, clearly expecting good news about my potential purchase. "Mr. Xavier, how lovely to see you. Have you made a decision about our townhomes?" "I have," I said pleasantly. "But first, I was hoping we could discuss a few concerns that came up during my team's review." Her smile remained fixed. "Of course, though I'm sure any minor issues can be addressed." "Minor might be understating it," I said, pulling out a thick folder. "My architect found 37 code violations in your plans. My foreman documented over 50 OSHA violations on your site, and my legal team discovered that your husband's contractor's license was suspended last year." Margaret's smile vanished. "I don't know what you're playing at, but those are serious allegations." "They are," I agreed. "Almost as serious as having your sister-in-law deliberately change my address in the county records so you could steal my land." Her face paled. "That's preposterous. You have no proof." "Actually, I do," I said calmly. "Linda Weldon made the change to my records on March 15th at 2:42 p.m. I have the audit trail from the county's database." Margaret's composure cracked. "You can't possibly think anyone would believe you over us. We're respected members of this community." "Are you?" "Because I've also compiled a list of complaints and lawsuits from homeowners in your existing development. Not to mention the shell company you're using to hide your husband's suspended license." She stood up abruptly. "I think you should leave. Our attorneys will be in touch." "That's fine," I said, rising calmly. "Mine already have been, with the county commissioners, building department, OSHA, and the district attorney's office. Oh, and I filmed our conversation this morning where you admitted to knowing this was my property." Her face contorted with rage. "You're making a huge mistake, Xavier. We have connections you couldn't imagine." "So do I," I replied. "And mine aren't built on fraud." I left the sales office feeling a mix of satisfaction and anxiety. I'd thrown down the gauntlet, but I knew the Weldons wouldn't go down without a fight. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, construction activity on my property doubled. More equipment arrived, and workers began operating at a frantic pace, clearly trying to get as much done as possible before any official action could be taken. Nathan called me, sounding concerned. "Vince, the Weldons have filed a harassment complaint against you and your company. They're claiming you're interfering with their legitimate business operations." "Let them," I said. "We've got the truth on our side." "Truth doesn't always win in court," he warned. "Be careful." By afternoon, the first official response to our complaints came in the form of an OSHA inspector arriving at the construction site. I watched from my property line as the inspector, clipboard in hand, began documenting violations. Within an hour, work had been halted due to critical safety issues. Margaret Weldon arrived shortly after, screaming at the inspector and threatening lawsuits. When that didn't work, she turned her attention to me, marching up to where I stood watching. "You think you're so clever," she hissed. "This is just a temporary setback. We'll be back building tomorrow." "I doubt that," I replied. "Those OSHA violations carry hefty fines and they won't let you resume until they're corrected." "Money talks," she sneered, "and we have plenty of it." "So do I reminded her, "and mine isn't tied up in fraudulent development schemes." Her eyes narrowed. "You know, we could still make a deal. You want your land back, name your price." I laughed. "You want to sell me back my own property that you stole. That's rich." "Think about it," she pressed. "Legal battles can take years. By then, these townhomes could be built and occupied. Or you could buy the land back now and we all move on." I considered her offer for a moment, then shook my head. "No deal. I'm going to enjoy watching your whole scheme fall apart." The next day brought more official action. The county building department issued a stop work order based on Gabriella's report of code violations. The district attorney's office announced they were investigating possible fraud related to the tax auction. And 3 news vans parked along the road, reporters eager for comments about the growing scandal. I gave a brief interview, sticking to the facts about the incorrect address and suspicious auction. Margaret refused to speak to reporters, sending a generic statement through a hastily hired PR firm claiming they were the victims of a vengeful competitor. By the end of the week, the Pinecrest HOA was in full damage control mode. Construction had been completely halted. Their pre-sale customers were demanding refunds, and the county commissioners had scheduled an emergency hearing to review the land auction. The hearing was held the following Tuesday in the county administration building. The large meeting room was packed with curious onlookers, reporters, and many of my employees who had come to show support. The commissioners heard testimony from county staff about the address change, from Linda Weldon, who nervously admitted her brother-in-law had asked her to fix a clerical error, and from me about never receiving any tax notices. After 3 hours of testimony, the commissioners voted unanimously to invalidate the land auction due to improper notification and evidence of deliberate fraud. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders as the gavel came down. My land would be returned to me. But there was still the matter of the half-built foundations, trenches, and construction equipment littering my property. As I left the hearing, Margaret and Thomas Weldon stood waiting in the hallway, their faces masks of fury. "This isn't over," Thomas growled. "We've invested hundreds of thousands in that development already." "You invested in fraud," I corrected him, "and now you're paying the price." "We still have buyers," Margaret said defiantly. "People who put down deposits and signed contracts. We're obligated to deliver those townhomes." "Not my problem," I replied, starting to walk away. "Wait," Thomas called after me. "What would it take to make this right? We need to build somewhere." I paused, an idea forming. "Meet me at my office tomorrow morning. I might have a proposition for you." The next morning, the Weldons arrived at Alexander Construction's headquarters, looking much less confident than they had in previous encounters. I kept them waiting in the lobby for 30 minutes, a petty but satisfying power move. When I finally invited them into my conference room, Nicole, Roberto, and Nathan were already seated, prepared for the negotiation. "Thank you for coming," I began, keeping my tone professionally neutral. "I've been thinking about your situation." "We're listening," Thomas said tersely. "You have 22 customers who have put down deposits on townhomes that can't be built where you planned. You've spent money on site work and materials, and you're facing potential criminal charges for fraud." Margaret shifted uncomfortably in her seat but remained silent. "I'm willing to offer you a solution," I continued. "Alexander Construction will take over your contracts with those 22 buyers. We'll honor the price points you established and the general floor plans they selected." The Weldons exchanged confused glances. "Why would you do that?" Thomas asked suspiciously. "Because I own a 40-acre parcel on the north side of town that's already zoned for multi-family development. We've been planning a project there, and we can incorporate your townhome buyers into our plans." "And what do you want from us?" Margaret asked, her voice having lost its usual edge. "3 things," I said firmly. "First, you sign over all rights to the eastern portion of my property, which legally should be mine anyway. Second, you pay for the cleanup and restoration of the land you've damaged. And third, you resign from the Pinecrest HOA board and have no involvement in the new development." "That's ridiculous," Thomas scoffed. "We'd be giving up everything." "Not everything," Nathan interjected. "You'd be avoiding criminal charges for fraud, tax evasion, and operating without a valid contractor's license." Roberto slid a folder across the table. "We've prepared a full report for the district attorney. If we don't reach an agreement today, this gets filed tomorrow morning." The Weldons spent a few minutes whispering to each other, clearly weighing their options. Finally, Margaret looked up. "We need assurances that our current buyers will be accommodated." "They will," I promised. "Nicole has already reviewed your contracts and confirmed we can meet the specifications at the price points you set." After another whispered consultation, Thomas nodded reluctantly. "We'll agree to your terms, but we want written confirmation that you won't pursue criminal charges." "I can't promise what the district attorney might do independently," I said, "but I won't actively pursue charges if you comply fully with our agreement." By the end of the day, the papers were signed. The Weldons relinquished all claims to my eastern property, agreed to pay for restoration, and resigned from their HOA board positions. In exchange, we took over their contracts with the townhome buyers and agreed not to provide additional evidence to prosecutors unless they breached our agreement. The next few weeks were busy as we cleaned up the mess on my eastern property and began modifying our plans for the northern development to accommodate the 22 townhome buyers. Surprisingly, most of the buyers were relieved by the change, especially once they saw our higher quality construction standards and more thoughtful community design. 1 month after the agreement, I stood on my eastern property, now restored to its natural state. The trenches had been filled, construction debris removed, and native grasses reseeded. It would take time for nature to fully heal the scars, but the land was mine again. Nicole walked up beside me, surveying the restored landscape. "What are you going to do with this property now?" "Still build the headquarters?" I considered the question, looking out over the rolling field that had nearly been lost to greed and corruption. "Eventually, yes, but I think I'll let it rest for a while first. The north development is coming along nicely," she commented. "The former Pinecrest buyers are actually pleased with the changes we've made to the floor plans." "Quality matters," I said simply. "The Weldons didn't seem to think so," I chuckled. "No, they didn't, and it cost them everything." 6 months later, I received an invitation to join the newly formed Homeowners Association for our northern development, now called Mountain View Terraces. The new board, elected by the homeowners themselves, wanted a representative from Alexander Construction to serve as an advisor. At the first meeting, I was surprised to see several familiar faces, people who had originally put deposits on the fraudulent Pinecrest Meadows townhomes. "We wanted to thank you," said Valerie, one of the new board members. "Not just for honoring our contracts, but for building homes we can be proud of." "It's what we do," I replied simply. After the meeting, I drove back to my property, taking the long way around to pass the former Pinecrest HOA development. The once pristine neighborhood had fallen into disrepair since the Weldons' departure, with unmaintained common areas and peeling paint on the community center. I heard the new homeowners had filed a class action lawsuit against the former board for mismanagement of funds. The Weldons, I'd heard, had moved to Arizona, where Thomas was working as a salesman for a roofing company. Linda had lost her job at the county assessor's office and faced her own legal troubles for tampering with official records. As I pulled into my driveway, I looked out at my eastern property, now peaceful in the evening light. Next spring, we would break ground on the new Alexander construction headquarters, properly permitted, professionally designed, and built to last, just like my grandfather would have wanted. The whole ordeal had been a stark reminder of something my father always told me. In construction, as in life, there are no shortcuts. Build it right or don't build it at all. The Weldons had tried to take a shortcut, stealing my land through fraud rather than acquiring property legitimately. Their hasty, corner-cutting approach to development had ultimately cost them everything, while my patient, quality-focused philosophy had prevailed. As I watched the sunset over my land, all of my land, I couldn't help but feel that justice had been served. The Pinecrest HOA had built 22 townhouses on my property, but in the end, my construction company had taken them all and built something better.